We are officially in meltdown mode. Purdue loses a third straight, and this time to the rivals. Indiana Hoosiers take one at Assembly Hall. We're going to try to pick up the pieces. Things are falling apart for our Boilermakers, but that doesn't stop us. It's the Boilers in the Stands post-game show starting right now. Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands post-game show edition. I am your host, Kraig Bowers Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Joe Jackson and Kraig Bowers. Tough one here tonight, as Purdue falls in Assembly Hall. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Appreciate you guys hanging out. I understand it's been a tough couple weeks to be a Purdue Boilermaker fan, and salt on the wound as the rivals hand you your third straight loss. And I'll start things off and then I'll kick it around to these guys. But I think we all kind of understand what's going on with this team in terms of, defensive, inefficiencies and ability and all that. But tonight it just came down to heart in a lot of ways, because this team finally woke up in the final 15 minutes of this game and scratched and clawed their way back to making it a one-possession game. But that really only highlighted the lack of effort this team showed for the first 25 minutes of this game. They looked disinterested. They looked out-hustled, out-coached, outplayed all the way across the board. And it's really disappointing coming off of two tough losses where things might not have been perfect, but you at least were playing hard. And yeah, you might have got out schemed, as we covered in the last two losses. Tonight wasn't as much about scheme. We'll get into some of that. But tonight, to me, was more about the heart and desire and the edge you needed to come out with, knowing you're on a 2-game losing streak. And instead, you let your rivals, the Indiana Hoosiers, kick you in the face again. And, for as great as this senior class has been for 4 years, and they have been remarkable, but they have let Indiana beat them more times than not in these situations, specifically in Assembly Hall. And so this was your last time as a senior class going to Assembly Hall to try to right that wrong. They've gotten you a few times when you were number one in the country. They've stormed the court on you a few times. And we all understand Indiana's feeling themselves right now. They just won a national championship in football. They got their football team out on the court before the game starts. They're fired up as a program. And it was time for Purdue to kind of put their foot down and remind everyone who they are as a basketball program. And instead, you embarrassed yourselves for 25 minutes. I'll give you credit for waking up at the end, but it was too little too late. And so we'll have to see how the rest of the season goes. I think most Purdue fans will know that we've been through this the last 4 or 5 years where this team goes through this almost the identical lull every single year. So I'm not going to give up on what this team can do in March, but that's not going to take away from the anger and frustration that I have right now. I'll throw it to you guys now. I'm done ranting.
Well, that was probably the most interesting intro that we've had from you, Greg, in terms of how you lead the show off. But I'm with you, and I'm going to be completely honest. I'm going to be pretty critical a lot tonight. And kind of similar to what you were saying, Greg, we've been through this. We've seen losing stretches. That doesn't mean we're giving up on the team. It doesn't mean we're not fans of the team. It doesn't mean we don't believe this team can still reach the highest goals that we've talked about at the beginning of this year in terms of this team potentially reaching. But I put a tweet out in the first half. Like, it was an embarrassing effort on the glass. It was an embarrassing effort defensively from a communication standpoint. And it was jarring. Just I think most Big Ten fans watched the game before this and then came into this game. And to me, not saying everybody would agree with this, but to me, you watch a Nebraska team that is so in sync, that is so communicative on defense in terms of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish with the team that is not by any means the most athletic team in the world. And you just watch that beauty of what they're doing in a close loss against Michigan without their two best players, and turn around and come into this game and watch the lack of communication, the breakdowns. There was even offensively just completely out of sync. And this team just doesn't feel like a team right now. Even the vibes feel off. Like it just doesn't feel, even like good things happen, bad things happen. Like it doesn't feel right now like this is a team that's gelling together, that's completely together on either end of the court. And I'm just at a complete loss. I don't completely get it, but like there's never been a better time to me than right now of like it. I know a lot of times player meetings kind of get called out for, being jokes of happening at the wrong times or whatever. But to me, there's never been a better time for a players meeting. And I don't give a damn who this team says the leader on the team is from a vocal standpoint. Your superstar is your leader that has to set the tone. And that's ultimately where the buck lies. And like that, Braden Smith needs to be the guy bringing this team together right now, somehow, some way, and saying like, we've got to communicate better. We've got to be in sync better on both ends of the court throughout and everything that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, echo a lot of what you guys said. For me, like this game's just a culmination of a lot of little things, right? Where missed defensive rebounds early on leads to some second chance points. Like obviously the defensive communication was way off, and missing free throws early on, some uncharacteristic turnovers, and like all that adds up in a game where Purdue still played. Purdue was the better team for, I don't know, 15 to 18 minutes of this game. Um, but on the road in that environment, like those little things just add up. And yeah, it is jarring to see. I think I mean, I don't know if Purdue fans really had a hope of the Big Ten title after the Illinois loss. Like obviously that's out the window. And for me now, it's all right. You have 2 games over the next 13 days. Like Purdue finally gets their break. The 2 games, they will be double-digit favorites in both, in Maryland and Oregon. Obviously, given how Purdue has been playing, that's not like a guarantee win by any means, but in theory, 2 kind of get right games over the next 13 days, you get your break, and then you hit another tough stretch. It's all about March now. Like, obviously, the way this team is playing currently, they cannot be a Final Four team. I think most, maybe not in this specific moment, but after a couple days, I'm sure most Purdue fans will be like, yeah, like at their peak, Purdue still can make a run. Just have to get back to it. And so that's, to me, like that's what the rest of this regular season is about, is positioning yourself as best as you can for March. Yeah, it would have been great to get a 1 seed. Probably not going to do that unless you run the table here, which, can happen. But yeah, you just got to look to March and you just got to regroup. Like I'm hoping that the 2 games over the 13 days helps like TKR, Braden get 100% healthy. I'm sure, I mean, everybody at this point in the college basketball is dealing with some sort of minor injury. So that's kind of where my head went immediately. It's just like, all right, got to figure things out. And the bright side is it feels a lot of like easy fixes of just like knowing the scouting report, hitting guys again defensively on rebounds, where this team like has been a very good rebounding team for most of the year. That's gone away. Braden and TKR just getting 100% back in sync, and I think we saw that back in the second half more. So just, I don't know, just getting back to who they are, and you got to go make a run in March, because at the end of the day, that's what this entire season has been about.
Now,
Yeah,
Greg, before you, I want to direct something back to specifically what Joe said before you jump in here, Greg.
Yep.
You said a lot of easy fixes. So I'm just going to flip this back on you specifically to things that we have said as we've broken down like what Purdue has to do defensively because of their limitations, right? In terms of their own athleticism, ability to guard one-on-one, that sort of stuff. Like, are they actually easy fixes given those limitations and knowing that Purdue has to play a specific way and that you have to look at the scouting report and say like, all right, we're just going to have to like play these odds and hope these guys don't hit threes like Connor Enright, because the percentage chances say they're not going to hit those threes. Like, is it actually easy fixes of just the scouting report, or are these limitations just out of reach of being able to be a top 15, top 20 type of defense that actually has a chance to contend?
I would say there's just limitations defensively, and I broke it down, I feel like, in detail in the last game. So like I definitely get what you're saying, but also if Purdue just hits like 4 more guys for defensive rebounds, they win this game. If Purdue just doesn't throw like 3 errant passes, they win this game. Purdue makes a couple more free throws in the first half, they win this game. So like in the sense of, is it easy fixes to get this defense to be a top 15 defense? Probably not, just because there are the limitations. Are there easy fixes to win this game, to win Illinois, to probably UCLA was maybe not quite as much, but still UCLA to a lesser degree? I still do think so. Like they're, like I said, just rebounds, turnovers, free throws. Like that was thing I noted down multiple times this game. It's just like Braden falling with 0.6 seconds left on the shot clock. Like just little things like that ultimately added up to me. And that's not taken away. The defense wasn't good in the first half at all, obviously. But like there are other areas to be fixed. And then you just have to trust that this offense is good enough. And usually it is. And that's kind of, I guess, would be my take on it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I didn't want to like, I wasn't trying to like question you on that. I just, for fans who listen to us like talk about the limitations, I wanted to clarify. So.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the foul at the end of the shot clock for Braden Smith, 0.6 on the shot clock, I thought Painter made a really nice move right before there. There was a dead ball, so he switched Jacobson in to guard the inbounds. The inbounds cannot get there underneath the hoop. You got 0.6 seconds. I know that's enough time to get a shot off, but let it be 30 feet from the hoop. It can't be right under the rim. So, like, the foul wasn't, to me, the most egregious thing. The play itself, letting him slip through to get the ball, and for the fact that the ball actually got through clean to him, was more egregious than the foul itself. Execution. To start the second half, to fall asleep on the first play of the second half after everything that had gone on in the first half, unacceptable. And I'm sitting there with my wife, and we've been going over, we're beating our heads against the wall at this point about it. But I said it in the last show, and it just highlighted again to me in this game. Yeah, a guy hits a three, and they're like, oh, he's only made 28% of threes on the year. Well, when he's wide open, those stats are going to change. So, like, again, the guy hits it at the end of the game. I get, more times than not, you're going to let a guy like that take the shot. But how about give some adversity, give some attrition to the play? Instead, these guys are, a lot of times taking shots that aren't getting enough getting contested enough, not fighting through, whatever they're trying to run in terms of their play. There's not enough war of attrition. There feels like there's too much going through the motions. And when Purdue finally turned the switch, that was like they had like two possessions in a row where the ball was just like deep, and they get the layup underneath. They get the three in the corner because they're moving with intent instead of like I don't know if they're waiting for Braden to figure out what he wants to do or what, but it just feels like they're asleep at the wheel sometimes on both ends of the court until they actually get engaged. And so that for me is the biggest frustration. And all this stuff about, again, going back to my original point, I'm done with the whole, 9 times out of 10, this team's not going to shoot like this. They are when this team isn't going to play defense tougher. They are going to. And so I'm done giving the outlier excuse because we're getting beyond outliers. It's happening too much for me to say, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to play the averages here. No, let's start playing a little tougher defense, and then we'll go back to playing the averages.
Well, I mean, IU only shot 36% from three today. I don't think anybody is going to look at that as an outlier performance from IU in a positive way. Like, I mean, Purdue came in knowing that IU could bomb away from three and shoot threes. So I don't think anybody can make an outlier excuse for this one. But to your point of you talked about that baseline out of bounds play with 0.6 to go. Like, to me, that was a summation of the entire game because you have a chance at a rebound. The two guys going for the rebound, like before that blob play happens, you have a chance at a rebound. The two guys going for the rebound don't communicate. The ball goes out of bounds. And you're like, oh, well, there's only 0.6 left. What can they do? Oh, we give up a cut to the rim, which, by the way, IU freaking torched us on cuts all night long. And Braden Smith fouls the guy, lets him through, and 2 points for IU. So, like, to me, that series right there encapsulated this entire game. Lack of communication, lack of attention to detail. Points for IU.
Yeah, I think, like, again, my focus is completely on March at this point. It's like I don't, obviously you want to win Big Ten games because it positions your seeding and all that. So talking from that point of view, like, this was Purdue's third worst offensive performance of the season on a points per possession basis. Like, they have an average night offensively, they win. And so there's two different aspects of that. One, Purdue's offense, like, just has to be elite every night. The three of their 4 losses, they have been 3 of their 5 worst offensive performances. The only outlier was the Illinois game, obviously, and quietly Purdue was also unguardable offensively. Just Illinois won the 3-point battle. Similar kind of to this game where the IU wins the 3-point battle. But, like,
cut into your thought just a little bit though. My only question on the Illinois offensive efficiency, are those numbers a little bit skewed because of the day Braden had versus the day that everyone else on the team had?
I mean, it's just points per possession. So obviously Braden going nuts is going to elevate that. And you don't want to bank on that every single game. Like, just flipping back through, I mean, Purdue as a team shot 67% from 2, 37% from 3, 81% from the free throw line, and only had 3 turnovers. Like, in general, it's still just going to be a pretty good day. And then Braden going nuclear is obviously going to elevate that to probably the level that it was. But
okay,
I mean, getting back to my point, like, so there's the aspect of, like, Purdue can just go on a heater in March offensively. Like, it is within their DNA to be able to do that. On the flip side of that, you don't want to have to rely on that. Like,
right.
Losing 3 of their 5 worst offensive games to me signifies, like, okay, the offense has to be going because the defense can't win them a ball game. Really, the only game defensively that's won them is the USC game, probably. Maybe Washington to a lesser degree. Every other win's pretty much just been the offensive side of the ball carrying. And that's a scary formula to have come March. Now, Purdue, again, they have the talent, they have the superstars to do it. Their margin of error is minimal to none right now. And that's where, again, getting back to not boxing out, not hitting free throws, careless turnovers, like, that's where you have no margin of error because there are just such limitations to what you can do defensively that you got to be perfect everywhere else. And if you aren't, that's how you end up losing by 5 on the road.
Well, let's take a quick timeout. We've got a lot to get into, and you get anybody that's here in the chat that's here to vent, feel free, man. This is the safe place for that. Obviously, there's a line, so let's try to make sure we keep that line respectable. But we appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate everyone hanging out. It will get better. Again, maybe you talk about different iterations of these Purdue teams over the last 5-6 years. Every single one of these teams, even dating back to 2018, when Ryan Klein and Carson Edwards, went off in the tournament, they had a really rough stretch, to end the season. They won every home game, and then, they made it interesting at the end of the year. And so you can point to the majority of these teams over the last 10 years that hit a stretch just like this. That doesn't guarantee anything going forward, but I do think there is a precedent that this program has kind of set of showing that they can adjust when the adversity hits. Now, 3 losses in a row, they better wake up here coming up on Sunday. But and this is obviously a different roster than some of these teams that we're talking about. But I still have a lot of belief in this coaching staff and these players, but they are in a rut like no other, and that's going to put this whole fan base in a rut, rightfully so, as bragging rights go to IU. So once again, this is your place to vent here tonight. Let's take a quick timeout, Kraig, and when we come back, we'll go over rotations, we'll go over team stats, player stats, and continue to try to pick up the pieces.
Hey, folks. Quick shout out to our new sponsor that's making it easier and shinier than ever to keep your ride looking fresh. Introducing Remington Auto Wash, your locally owned and family-operated car wash located 30 minutes north of Purdue University in Remington, Indiana. Whether you're in a rush or love doing it yourself, they've got you covered. Touchless automatic bay, perfect for a fast, scratch-free clean with no brushes, no worries. Self-serve bays for the hands-on car lovers who want to wash, rinse, and shine their way. High-powered vacuums, perfect for getting your interior looking as good as the outside. Clean water, top-quality soaps, and equipment that is run by real people right here in the community. Swing by Remington Auto Wash and support a local business that cares about your car just as much as you do. Open 24 hours a day at the corner of U.S. Highway 24 and 231 in Remington, Indiana. That's Remington Auto Wash, where clean cars and local pride go hand in hand.
All right, we are back here. Shout out to Remington. We appreciate your support to the program. Thank you all once again for tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that nonsense. We appreciate every single one of you. All right, let's get into this. Joe, I know we always hit the board. The board, I think, did us well in the last game because it was so clear the defensive scheme that Purdue just, had a tough time with and trying to stop, Keaton and Illinois, and 46 points dropped on their head. In this game, you'd have to help us out if there's anything board specific that kind of needs to be walked through. If not, we can move on to the next thing. But it just, for me, wasn't entirely clear, outside of hustle, what Purdue was or what IU was doing to Purdue to kind of throw them off, because Braden had 0 assists in the first half. That's pretty telling. Like, we haven't had that all year. And so I was that not Braden being engaged enough, or was that something that IU was doing strategically?
Yeah, I mean, I thought IU was doing a good job, especially in the first half, of really digging in on drives. And you saw, I think Jakari maybe got stripped on one. I think Lawyer, TKR, and then obviously Braden on one or two, where IU, they also mixed up their coverages a decent bit. And in the second half, they kind of went away from it, and that's when Braden started really picking them apart. But what I mean by like digging is like as the drive is happening, you have like one pass away, for lack of a better word, dig down onto the ball. And so what I mean by that, so we get oriented here. All right. So you got like, ball screen up top. IU for first half, they were doing more hedging, right? Where then Braden would kind of drag this out. But then basically, even if they weren't in hedge and if they stayed back here, right, and Braden's now coming off the screen tight, if they're here, this guy's going to be chasing over the top. Whoever, well, let's say CJ here, his guy would, as Braden was driving, would just do a dig, would just dig really quick. And so it just stunts. And then if they strip the ball, great, going the other way. If not, it's an immediate get back. And so they just did a pretty good job of like just providing, I think, enough pressure defensively to not like, they masked enough to where Braden didn't just have like an immediate read. And Braden's so good that sometimes it doesn't matter, but like it just felt like usually when Braden's coming off, basically he knows what the coverage is and then he knows what the counter is immediately. But here, just with some help here, it just threw him off, I thought, a little bit. I guess the other thing, and flipping to the defense side of the ball, right, IU, they run a ton of like pin downs. So like, right, they'll run a set like this, or even sometimes like this, where you have like ball up top here, it's defender. Now, Purdue didn't always, I don't think, like usually their normal defense is to have this defender be here. I don't think they did that quite as much, just trying to navigate some of this. But as it's coming down, it does come down to at some point just like communication, scouting report, because there isn't that athleticism. So, right, Purdue, I think sometimes got caught trying to switch things and cut through. Sometimes they got caught trailing. IU would also do a good job where, so this guy here, say he's already kind of cleared out, and now you pass the ball here. You had this here and this here. Like IU does such a good job with like flare screens and things like that. And so there's just so many little screens like that. And that's like, that is something that Purdue struggles with mightily, is navigating screens. And then when you add in the fact that they aren't communicating well defensively, like IU's offense is poised to just kind of pick this defense apart and get good looks. Now, at some point, like even like IU still was hitting some tougher looks, Obviously, once you get in a rhythm, though, because Purdue is letting up open looks, like it can kind of compile there.
Right.
Because the defense looked better in the second half. Some of it was just simply IU missing shots. Like sometimes the defense just looked better.
I mean, the one
It
step
wasn't.
back, the step back three was crazy, but then the next three he hits in the corner, they block the shot, and so they just by luck they block the shot, but it goes right to the corner for another wide open three on the one guy you can't leave open. So that like that's happenstance, but that's what happens when your margin of error is gone because you're down 12, versus, kind of a back and forth affair. They could play a little more confident. They're going to have, the ball just seems to bounce your way a little more when you're working with a lead like that, right? Versus when you're down 12 and every possession. Because there was a couple times where Purdue came down the court and might have been more aggressive in transition, but they knew how important the possession was. So they had to like slow everything down, get really deliberate, and they did their best to get back in it. But it just goes to show you the difference in style of play, chemistry, confidence, looseness, how a make or miss league. Well, when you've got that margin of error, you're able to make more times than not versus when you're walking the tightrope.
Yeah, and I thought we were better defensively in the second half against like some of the cutting action and whatnot. But in terms of leaving people open from three on some of the flares and other stuff and just moving the ball around, I didn't think we were any better at all. I just thought IU missed quite a few open threes, to be honest, in the second half that I was like, well, we got lucky there.
And they missed three front end 1-and-1s. That was crazy.
I think some of that's deceiving in terms of like, I mean, I thought we dialed up the ball pressure a little bit in the second half, but I do think some of it's deceiving in terms of don't want to give more hope than there should be in terms of what we look like defensively. But I don't know, man. It's concerning. And like you heard Robbie, obviously, by the way, incredible broadcasting tonight. I could listen to Robbie and Fanta all day long, every day long. But if Robbie's calling out like blowing assignment, lack of communication, just over and over and over again, then like the issue's real and it's there.
Yeah, no question. I definitely have some different specific player questions, but we'll get into that when we get into individual breakdowns, as long as I remember.
Greg,
yes, sir.
Can I ask Joe one defensive question quick?
You don't want to ask me the defensive question? I'm kidding.
Greg, can I ask you one defensive question quick?
I mean, Big Boy in the chat says, show us how close you are. This is my chance to shine. To Big Boy. Don't worry about it. That's Ernie. Ernie is, I would call him a friend, but he's a loser. And so he's in my chat bugging me right now. But don't mind Ernie. I blocked him because I'm done listening to his nonsense. He's harassing me on Twitter. But this was my chance. Now you throw it to Joe on the defensive question. But no, go ahead.
All right. So Greg, I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm strictly asking this question because I see a decent amount of fans asking this question. And we do have a lot of fans who were around for the entire Gene Katie era, and some that were around for coaches before that, and who watched this really intense, just I'm going to man up, one-on-one, on-ball pressure. I'm going to fight through screens, yada, yada. We've seen switching, we've seen high hedging and recover and everything else, and none of it's really worked great necessarily for a long time this year. It's like, just explain in general, Joe, like why we aren't just playing that, like, just man up on your guy, fight through screens, let's play one-on-one D.
Respectfully, have we seen this roster? This roster is incredibly skilled, like so skilled that they can win a national championship. This roster strength is not just manning up defensively. CJ, the best defender on the team, who is a very good defender, like he is still not the build of just like, go put him on him and he's just going to shut him down. Like, and so you move down the line. We know what Fletch is defensively, right? He can just get overpowered athletically or physically. Braden, very good off-ball defender and has his moments on ball, but even him, right? He can get blown by. Like, you're not putting him on a star player. TKR oftentimes is guarding stretch fours. Like, he doesn't move well enough. And then you have Clough, who does a good job moving at his size, but still is like maybe not the elite like rim protector that Purdue has had in past years, where that also can help. Where even thinking into like Edey years, you could just kind of funnel him to Edey and it'd be fine. Or some of those years before, and I'm not going to act like I know all the details of the teams from earlier this century, but like that's pretty much what it is. And we see the comment, play a zone then. Well, do you want to play a zone against Illinois, who put up 43s and is going to make 50% of them? Like, zones are supposed to take away the paint. Do you want to play zone against Indiana and give up more open threes? Like, can you do it? Sure. And maybe it is something they should try. I just don't think, I know it's always brought up, but like, I don't think it's a zone solves everything. Because then you look at this roster, zones generally work best when you have some length, you have some versatility, you can move well. The top guys of this zone defense is CJ and Braden. 6 foot. What is CJ listed? Is he listed at 6'3" and 6 foot? And both of those feel maybe a bit high. And then you have TKR out on the wing. And so, like, again, this because it's the defensive question. That's why I'm going off more on that. The trade-off has been, and Painter has gone to this over the last handful of years, incredibly skilled offensively. Like, and you kind of look back through, and like I have his history pulled up. In the early part, right, from when he got the job to 2011, it seems like incredible defenses, made 2 Sweet 16s, nothing beyond that. And then as you start getting into the offense, that's where you get a couple more Sweet 16s, an Elite 8, a Final 4. So that's just kind of been the trade-off, and some of it's also who you can recruit, and right, it goes all back to that. And I joked last game, because Braggs asked, like, what can you do defensively? And I said, go get Nogel Eastern. Like, see if he has eligibility, something like that. Because it at some point, I don't care if you're the best defensive coach in the world. Like, if your players aren't going to communicate your scheme, what are you supposed to do? And when you couple that with Purdue's lack of athleticism, lack of length, like, that's where teams can just get some of these looks. And so probably a long-winded answer to say, like, if in Painter's ideal world, I'm sure he would love to just do that. Like, just play man, like, just man up, don't have to help too much, feed it down to a big if they blow by. But at you're just dealt the cards you are, and obviously he puts the roster together too. But there are just limitations.
And not only do I think there's limitations, but then you also have guys that are inexperienced trying to join the rotation, whether it's Omer Meyer or Daniel Jacobson or Oscar Clough or Jack Benter, whether it's young players that still have a lot of developing to do, or an older player that's new to the system. You know, he may not make as many mistakes, but the communication aspect isn't going to be as dialed as guys that are, have been here 3 years. But then when you talk about the guys that have been here 3 years, Fletcher Lawyer obviously has his defensive, flaws. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith both can play very physical at times, but both can also overplay things at times too. Braden, there's times Braden's going to try to cheat. Braden was, to me, the one guy that was diving at the floor all 40 minutes. Whether he was perfect in his defensive assignments, he at least was showing that hustle and desire that you want to see from a guy that, was in the talks of National Player of the Year before the year started. He's lived up to being a leader. He needs to try to take it up a notch and really will his team. And I thought he tried even tonight. But even TKR at times, is going to play outside of himself, defensively, whether he's cheating or he's playing, way too over the top, physically or whatever you want to say. So, it's not an easy puzzle for this coaching staff to figure out, but it's frustrating. And Salty B's right. There are no excuses, because she says all these teams have mostly first-year players or transfers. I completely agree. I totally understand where you're coming from, but I'm just gonna work through this. Joe does a great job of explaining this stuff, and sometimes I can't put it perfectly into words, unfortunately for our guy Big Boy in the chat, but I know what I see. And so I'm just trying to work through it like the rest of you guys here in the chat. And luckily we have 2 experts here on the show that kind of help me try to figure this out.
1.5. I only consider myself half an expert, but Joe's a full expert. But I part of the reason that I brought that up, Joe, was just like, I don't think there's necessarily a different system that works better for this team based on personnel. This team just has to do what is laid out better. They have to communicate better. They have to hit the rotations better. They have to hit closeouts better. They've got to fight through screens better. Like they've just got to do what they're doing in the system currently at a higher level. And again, like we can point to examples, and I don't want to go back to the game we saw earlier tonight where a team was very much in sync, was hitting all their spots, was hitting their rotations perfectly, all those types of things, and just executing at a super high level. And I don't feel like we're executing the defensive plan as it is as high as level as we could, personally. I do want to bring this up because, one, it's Sleepers Media and they're in the chat. So I want to go ahead and look at it. Friends of the show, we've been on their show. They've been on our show. So Sleepers Media says Clough defensive shortcomings are what they are. And I think the disappointing part of tonight was when he got the ball in the post, he wasn't able to take advantage of matchups with single coverage. I want to, on the first point of that, like, I don't know how much I buy into the Clough defensive shortcomings as much as, like, I don't know that you want any 6'11" guy like on an island with the guys that he's been on an island with the last 3 games. Like, I think he's done as good as he could be asked to do in those situations. And Clough was graded. One of the reasons Purdue brought him in is he was graded as like one of the best high hedge and recover defensive bigs in the entire country. And I think he moves fairly well in those situations. But at some point, like if it's him and CJ that are better defenders in their roles, everybody else has to chip in, and everything has to be in sync all the way around too. Joe can disagree with me on that or mention more. Greg, you can too, by the way. But more importantly, the thing that I wanted to address here was the second half of this was, like, a few games ago, we were talking about, does this offense need to get more centric around Clough offensively because of what he was doing and because of the showings that he was having? And then all of a sudden in the last few games, it's just like, where did that guy go offensively that was like really starting to show out?
Can I have an answer for that potentially? Because this was an observation I made in the first 5 minutes of the game, and I want
no answer for Briggs.
And Joe, when you go back and do the watch back, because I'm not watching this game back, but you're going to, because that's the kind of guy you are. And when you do, the one thing I want to ask in this regard, first possession of the game, Clough seals off and has great position down low. He is anchored deep towards the basket. They do not get it in. When a post guy reveals good position, they don't get it into them fast enough. And on the first possession of the game, they skipped it up. They skipped on it. When, in my opinion, it should have gone right to him. And then there was later in the game where Braden Smith's coming down. He gets almost to the elbow of the free throw line, and I thought he was going to immediately give it into Clough. Instead, he kicks it out, and then they kicked it into Clough, and it ended up being a turnover because now the defense was able to recover. And it was like another example to me where, like, they're too hesitant to get it in. And maybe it was because we're spoiled for 2 years with Zach Edey with this group where you could throw it in with confidence quickly because of who Zach Edey is and the presence he showed down there. But I think that is part of the answer, is that they don't get it into the post fast enough when those guys establish themselves. And then by the time they finally do, they've been pushed off their spot and have to work their way back in.
All right, real quick before you answer, Joe, real quick, because this is hilarious. Carter just realized that he wasn't posting off of his personal account.
Shout out, Carter.
Welcome to the party. We appreciate you, Sleepers.
We appreciate you, Carter Elliott. Make sure you check your stuff and make sure you're posting from your personal account when you ask questions and not the official Sleepers Media account.
At least he wasn't like, I thought I was on my burner or something.
Right. Go ahead, Joe.
I this is more speculation than more like me being confident, but just something that maybe could be to that, like what you're talking about, Braggs, is we know Purdue is so incredible with their sets, but there is the possibility that at times like guys almost get too locked in. And it felt like, I mean, on a similar note, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, is like it just felt like guys just sometimes pass up pretty good looks, like from three too, or like you said, they just don't fire down low quick. And I don't know if that is just like knowing that you have Braden and TKR and like getting the ball to them is never going to be a bad thing. Because I don't think it's a lack of like confidence with these guys, like CJ, Benner, especially like those two, especially. It's not like they're never not confident shooting the ball. Even if you maybe want a little bit quicker trigger from really both at certain times. Myers obviously never going to be shy. Jakari's kind of that way too. Like, I don't know. It's just this interesting balance where you do have to play with some freedom, but you have to fit within the Purdue system, and the Purdue system wins them many, many games. But you do have to be able to balance that, and at some point just be a player and understand your reads and make the right play. And sometimes it is maybe going a little bit off script to get Clough in good position or things like that. It was shocking.
Let me ask you this, just to kind of, because this is just in the big. So let's just consider this the Clough and TKR breakdown of the individuals, and maybe not try to repeat ourselves here later. But this was going to be one of my questions. Was in the final 15 minutes, it felt like a deliberate change in their offensive strategy. We are going to get the ball to Trey Kaufman-Renn. I actually personally was not subscribing to that theory, because I just at this point am not fully trusting if he's going to be the one to bring them back in that situation. To his credit, he did. It wasn't always pretty, but he did. And so my question to you is, do you think this was just a game specific thing for this second half to try to climb their way back in? Or do you think there will be a more deliberate effort? Because Robbie Hummel brought it up on the broadcast as well. Just start with the ball in Trey Kaufman-Renn's hands and see where that gets you, because he was one of the most efficient offensive players in the country last year. And now this year, it feels like it's all falling apart. But maybe starting the ball with him, because you saw that one skip pass across the court to Braden. You saw it's not just like give it to him and everybody get out of the way and him go for, try to get that, go to his, hook shot. He can also pass it. So my question is, do you think they're going to make a deliberate switch and start going into Trey Kaufman-Renn to start their offense more?
I wouldn't be shocked, just because you look at what this game has been and this game was, and like it was brought back by your two superstars playing. I mean, if they weren't playing superstar level, like near superstar level, I don't think it was an A+ game for either. Although TKR was good. And he was exceptional if you could just take away like 3 plays. But yeah, no, I mean, we think back to Edey, and I understand Edey's different than TKR. But like that's how they would start. They would literally, I honestly think back then Purdue would just start dumping the first possession, dump the ball into Edey just to see like, all right, this is the coverage that they're going to play against him in the post. Are they going to double him? Are they going to leave him one-on-one? And I think you can do that some with TKR too, because he has been such an improved passer. Turnover rate has dropped a little bit from last year. Assist rate is up a little bit. Like it feels like he's more often than not making good reads. And he did have a couple bad passes in this one too. But no, I do think it's something that they can keep going to. Cause like, I mean, this was the first game all season. He had 20+ points. And like, we think back to last year, it felt like every other night he was doing that. So, and what that also does is it just alleviates some of the pressure off Braden. Like Braden right now has to be basically A+ Braden, and even like B+ Braden's sometimes just good enough. But if you can get TKR more involved, then that also in theory going to open back up Clough, right? Because now defense is going to focus on TKR, and then that opens up the Clough thing. And so I think it can open up avenues. It just got to kind of do it. And I do get it. Like you have one of the greatest point guards to ever play in the Big Ten on your team. Like it's hard to take the ball out of his hands, but at the same time, it can help you get some balance, and this team needs some balance right now.
Okay. Well, somebody said here.
Greg,
yep. Go ahead.
I had actually written this same point down, Greg, that you brought up. So kudos to you for bringing that up as well. Big picture with this team, and it was something that I started to question a couple of games ago when we were questioning the TKR supposed slump, even if the efficiency necessarily wasn't 100% showing it in terms of his efficiency, looking like it might have still been there like long term throughout the season. But as we were looking for that few game series, is like, so I've talked a lot about Meyer being a high volume shooter to be able to get in that efficient zone. And I've given kudos to Meyer in the last few games for figuring out how to be a lower volume shooter and still be efficient. But I think TKR is at his best as a high volume guy. And I wonder, I've been a guy who's long pressed for like Painter getting more people involved so that when those guys are called upon, they can hit shots and everything else. But like when you watch a lot of these teams, and I know there's a few that aren't this way, like Arizona's not this way. They have like 6 guys that can go get 15 to 20 any given night. And I still think this Purdue team does, but most of the really good teams in the country, you watch Duke or somebody like that, they've got 2 or 3 guys, right, that are going to go get all their points. And like, I almost wonder if this team didn't get so enamored over a stretch of like, we've got all these guys contributing now that we've kind of forgotten who our horses are, and whether or not this team would be better served of, hey, let's go back to the 2-man game that we were so successful with all year last year. We have all these other guys now, and most of those guys are efficient on low volume. They don't need super high volume. Let's play this 2-man game from the jump. And then when defenses really start keying in to stop that 2-man game, then feed CJ, then feed Benner, then feed Meyer, then feed everybody else. Let TKR make the right read out of that. And I absolutely love when we go to the empty side stuff that we did in the second half with TK, where we can really make it a 2-man game. And because I just think like TK has gotten much better as a passer. I think he's a much more willing passer when he's getting high volume. And makes that pass much faster and reads it much quicker when he feels like he's getting a lot of touches. And I still think that forces it. To me, it's almost like football, like Bears, right? It's like your run game that then opens up the pass. So like you feed TKR, that's your run game. Feed TKR down low, play that 2-man game. And then when the defense starts honing in on that, then that opens up everything else around you.
And so I think
just quickly, because I have a relevant stat, it's not updated obviously for this game, but I've tracked every Braden Smith pick and roll this year. Coming out on my Substack next week, I think. Feed the Post Substack. When they run empty corner pick and rolls, again, not updated for today, 1.59 points per shot. And that doesn't include offensive rebounds that lead to putbacks, like just points per shot. Basically, that equates to shooting 80% from 2 or 60% from 3. Is that what that math works out to? Something ridiculous. When they run that empty corner pick and roll, for anybody that isn't quite understanding maybe what that is, empty corner, very simple. And it's where they went to it a good bit today, where you just have this high pick and roll right here, but you have nobody in this strong side corner. So this is an empty corner pick and roll. And what it does, and Robbie did a great job kind of explaining it on the broadcast too, right? IU, they kind of were doing this drop coverage. Basically, you have player, defense. It's hard to help. It's hard to help from the low man right here because Braden's coming to you. TKR's popping here. So just kind of putting that all together for that empty corner pick and roll. Like, it is something I would like to see more as well, because it's just been hyper efficient all season long.
So that'll segue to my next question, and I think it still regards the bigs and the rotations of which bigs play with TKR. But I do want to get to some of these super chats because we had a bunch jump in here, not just from my idiot friend Ernie, who just loves watching me be miserable, but from other people that I like much more. Jason Depew, $10 super chat, saying, going to bed sad, but I still want to support you guys. Need to bench Fletcher, in my opinion. Everyone hit the like button. Appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I comment really quick on that? Because I like it's crossed my mind, and I'm a big Fletcher lawyer guy. Like, it is getting to the point though where it's like, all right, is it something that needs to happen? The question then becomes like, who are you starting Jakari? But they like Jakari coming in after 5 minutes and being the next defensive guy. Are you starting Meyer? Like, that doesn't feel like. Are you going Benner at the 3? I'm not like opposed to rotation change, but more of just like realistically, where are you going to it? Because I don't.
So CJ
Like,
moves to the 2 and Benner moves to the 3.
But then, and that's possible. But then Benner comes in at the 7 minute mark to spell TKR, and so then it's like, are you playing Benner 12 straight minutes to start the game? Like, that's what that rotation would kind of have to be. Or you're playing him for 3 minutes to bring in Fletch to spell him, to then bring Benner back in after 3 minutes for TKR. So sorry, I know we want to get through the super chats, but I just wanted to comment.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think we're
later.
going to probably do this post game a little differently. I mean, we can go 2.5 hours if you guys want. But we did get a bunch of super chats in here. Kraig, if you want to add on to that, go ahead. I mean,
Well, no, I would. Well, there is one more related to this. It said from DZE Fets. I don't know. Yep. I understand Payne's loyalty to his seniors, but tell me why the starting 5 shouldn't see a change. Wouldn't that force an attitude shift? I feel like that's probably directed towards lawyer. I can't say that 100%. That's just been where the most of the conversation has been around. But to Joe's point, and like, I think I mentioned this in the last post game show, I don't think there needs to be a starting change. I think you can change rotations and just change minute allotment if you want to. But to Joe's point, I think just with the way that you have to shift players around, I think Fletch is still best starting. And I mean, in 2 of the last 3 games, I think he played 2 of his lowest minute totals in the last 2 years. So you did start to see some of that already. Like, I do wonder, just with the defensive struggles, if they're with the defensive struggles, and like, if we move back to a little bit more of just like play more of the Braden Smith TK 2-man game, if you don't lean in to heavy defense on the perimeter a little bit more and just play more Jakari CJ together minutes. But I still think Fletch has to start there, and then you can rotate it around just a little bit different in terms of total minute allotment.
A few more things here, and then I'll get right back to you, Joe. We did have a $50 super chat come in here from Tyler Smith. Appreciate you, my friend. Brutal night and week, he says. Long overdue super chat from me. Purdue fans are lucky to have you guys and what you do. Joe learned a ton from X's and O's. We all do, every single. I thought the last show, as tough as the Illinois one was, and I always get a little nervous when I leave Joe on an island with just me screaming and shouting after losses. But I thought we held down the court pretty well until Kraig jumped in. So appreciate everybody tuning in. It's been a lot of fun doing this the last few years, and obviously these lulls that we hit every year at this time really test us as fans and analysts, and we do our best. I told Jenny when, right before we were getting ready to do the show, I was like, I'm gonna have to bite my tongue today, because I was hot after the Illinois game, but this one was different. The last game I was hot because of how do we figure out the adjustment of scheme. This one I was hot because of effort, and that's one thing I don't like. And if you guys recall last year when they lost to IU, they were in the same kind of lull they had hit in their season, and then they lost to IU. And I have a friend that coaches on this team, and I told them they could all walk back to West Lafayette. I was so upset last year when they lost. And so I was pretty pissed tonight, but I've learned to just, like, there was a couple times where I just kind of had to laugh just to keep myself from breaking something because I was getting so upset. But Jenny helped me through it. So shout out to Jenny. And thank you again for the $50 super chat, Tyler. I really appreciate that. Salty B.
Greg?
Yes, sir.
If you were nervous being on an island with Joe by yourself, think about how I felt when Joe just like left the show, and then you were asking me the same questions, and the whole time I'm like, well, if I answer something completely different from Joe, how dumb am I going to look right now?
Yeah.
I didn't even watch the show back. I normally watch the shows when I can't join. I didn't
Yeah.
even watch the first half back because I didn't want to know how wrong I was if I was
You
wrong
know
or
your
something.
stuff though.
Yeah, we did it. We did our best. The last game was very fascinating from a scheme standpoint because it was just, even from the untrained eye, it was so obvious. Tonight, it was more about effort and hustle
For sure.
and heart for me. And it lacked for 25 minutes minimum to start this game, which was really, I was texting these guys in the first half that they were going to lose because you could just see it. And I hate saying that, but unfortunately, sometimes you can just tell. And they almost proved me wrong at the end, but almost only counts in hand grenades and horseshoes, or whatever they say. Salty B, $5 super chat says, with 5 minutes remaining, our seniors finally had a look in their eye of focus. Haven't seen that look in 3 games. Why? And what happened to the fundamentals? That's what we're trying to figure out here tonight, Salty B. BK Bennett, $5 super chat says, losing 3 in a row hurts, but losing to an inferior IU team is embarrassing in the way that it happened. Where is the swagger? Play with discipline. And then Patel Boiler up, $5 super chat says, appreciate Boilers in the stands. IU's defense looked better than expected, but too many unforced errors and miscues from Purdue. That was well said. And then there was a super sticker that jumped in here from Beth Monin. I didn't even know we could do super stickers, but there's a super sticker from Beth. Thank you for your support to all you. Wanted to make sure I got to those and didn't push them all the way until the hour and a half mark of this show. But going back to the rotations, you kind of dialed this up, and this was going to be one of my questions. So let's just knock out the bigs from our individual player breakdown. And I think we could pull up the rotations here potentially, Joe, because my question is, if this is how you're going to roll in a 2-man game with TKR and Braden, does it make more sense? And did it show on this rotation chart tonight that they're going to go with Jacobson more than Clough in those situations? And my other question in regards to Jacobson, but you can answer this. Let me just shelf the second question of that. Did you see a rotational switch with Jacobson playing with TKR more so in the second half?
He did have a couple minutes, and especially when he got subbed back in, or when you called out earlier, Braggs, with like the 0.6 seconds left on the shot clock, he gets a couple minutes. Looks like he played 4, 5, 7 of about 50% of his minutes with TKR in this one, which probably does feel a bit high. It feels like him and Benner generally are more paired together. So yeah, like there was a little bit, I don't know if it's something they'll stick with. I think probably was more of just like, it wasn't Clough's game. And we look back through, like, Clough hasn't really had like a game where you could be like, he was just like bad. Like he wasn't good. And he still had 6 rebounds. It's not like he did nothing, but usually it's like he was fine at least. It just felt like he wasn't even quite there for this one. And so when you pair that with, the IU rotation as well, I don't know if I kind of forget your exact question. Did you bring up TKR at the 5?
It just felt like Clough got benched the way Fletcher got benched in the last game. Like he only had 1 minute in what, the last 15 minutes of the game, which was when the game turned.
And that was, Purdue went small. They went TKR at the 5 to try to match IU, Benner at the 4. And that's when, you just saw Purdue and just keep feeding TKR over and over, because like IU just doesn't have the bigs to withstand TKR for 40 minutes. And getting back, I mean, circling that back to like, does TKR just need to be more high volume? You can guard TKR for a possession or two. It's hard for a big to take 30 minutes of beating from TKR. And so there's some of that aspect too. I know.
So then to go back to my second question on this, then I'm sorry, I'm trying to land this plane. Trying to land this plane. Watching Daniel Jacobson, should he play more or should he play less? Because when I watch him play, I can see both being, I can see it both ways. There's times where I see him and his length really disturbs, but then there's other times where he's young, so they're not on the same page at times too. So I don't know if the answer is playing him. There's some people in the chat that are done with him. But there's other times I watch him like, maybe he needs to be out there more to give, to help defensively.
I think it goes to scheme, and this is something I've kind of been on. Like I get Clough in the high hedge and like pressuring. I just don't think Jacobson's built for that. Like he's the guy, and I know he's skinnier and like the contact down low can be worrisome at times, but to me, he's that like that. Trying to don't want to like jump too far. He's the Edey mold defensively of just like you should be able to funnel to him and he deflects shots. Now Edey's a better defender, or Edey senior year was a better defender than what Jacobson right now is. Obviously, I don't think I need to clarify that for anybody listening, but like Jacobson to me in that drop coverage, like that's where he can provide value. Now, I also get, though, I'm sure if we brought that up to Painter, his concern would be like, well, yeah, but then you're just allowing a ball handler to get into the paint, right? Because screen navigation isn't good on this team. So I don't know. To me, it's probably more matchup dependence. And like looking ahead, Maryland's a smaller team, especially with Pharrell Payne out. So maybe it's not as much of a Jacobson game and you go more TKR at the 5. Oregon, they'll play double big. So maybe it can be more Jacobson where you live with some jumpers and things. So I just think it's Purdue doesn't have a ton of flexibility in the rotation. I think the little bit that they're starting to get is how much they want to play TKR at the 5 or TKR with Clough and Jacobson. And that to me is more of a game to game thing rather than just like, oh, Jacobson sucks, don't play him, or Clough's terrible, don't play. Like, I think that's to me probably slightly overreacting, and it's more of just like some games it's going to be his games and he should probably play 20, and some games he should probably play like 8 minutes, and that's just kind of how it should be, at least to me. But I'm also not a D1 coach, so take my stuff.
Yeah, I think it isn't a grain of salt. Come on, give yourself more credit than that. I do think it's an interesting discussion though, right? Of like we're it seems like we're getting this answer consistently of like we don't want to just play drop all the time and let guys get into the paint. However, we went to a national championship game doing that. Now, granted, Zach Edey was on the back end of that, right?
Yes.
But
pretty important context.
Daniel Jacobson on the season is in the 99th percentile in the country in terms of block percentage defensively. He, in his last 5, he's still in the like 67th percentile in terms of block percentage defensively. Like he's not necessarily a bad option in that regard in terms of playing drop coverage. So like I get it. Like I get the question, and I even at times I'm like, well, do we actually have the personnel to do what you think we need to do defensively, or do we just need to be the best version of ourselves we possibly can playing drop like we did for a few years there? Now, to the point, right, when we think about that, we think, okay, if we play drop, we force guys into mid-range. That's the idea, right? If you're going to play drop, you're trying to force them off the three-point line, get them to take a mid-range shot.
I'd rather have Jalen Hood-Schifino score 52-point buckets than the amount of threes I've seen in the last 3 games.
But the problem is, Joe or Greg, when you allow that guy to get ahead of steam into the paint, if he keeps driving in, a second guy comes, and then you kick, and then rotation.
Yeah.
But we're getting into rotation with what we're playing too right now. So like it's just I don't know. I don't know if it's 6 one way and half a dozen another.
Death by 1,000 cuts, or take the hammer over the head.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect of playing DJ Moore is just from an offensive standpoint.
DJ Moore.
Did I say DJ Moore? No, I said
playing DJ
Moore minutes, not DJ Moore, the wide receiver.
That was quick though.
Not the Bears wide receiver that everybody's trying to trade now. I'm talking about DJ, playing him more. The other thing too, offensively, is the chemistry aspect. Again, then the catch-22 is they don't have chemistry. They're trying to feed him bounce passes that are way too hot. Way too hot, dude. Like he's 7'5". Like relax on the bounce passes. You're setting him up to fail. The one time they tried to lob it, I'll let that one go. He forced it as a turnover, but the bounce passes were really irritating to me. Outside of that, there was a couple times where I thought DJ collected himself, pretty nicely and showed like a semblance of balance and strength to like go into his motion and get a bucket or get a foul. He had a couple tough points, couple tough rebounds earlier in the game. So I see the light with DJ, but he's kind of a catch-22 at this point with things he does well and things that he still needs to develop at. So,
no, Greg, in my notes during the game in bold print, I put, how the hell do we still not know how to throw Jacobson a pass?
Yeah,
because he's like, remember Zach Edey freshman year. He couldn't catch those passes either. Zach Edey senior year could catch those rocket bounce passes, but not Zach Edey freshman year. Like,
right.
You've got to know who you're throwing the ball to. And it's like they're trying to feed Jacobson the same passes that they're feeding to Clough and that they're feeding to TKR. And he can't. Like, give the dude the ball where he can catch the ball and at the pace that he can catch the ball, so he at least has a chance to make a move.
Well, at this point, in the last 10 minutes of games that they played the last few, and the turnovers have been happening with Braden to TKR on some of these pick and rolls, short rolls, or like, and I get they're not going to bat 1,000 in their 2-man game, but you know, some of the turnovers are coming from there too, with playing too fast at times. So I don't know what's going on, but it hasn't been good here in the last few games. So I think that pretty much covered our bigs for the night. If we look at our individual player statistics, we can go over their exact numbers, but Trey Kaufman-Renn had 23 points on 9 of 14 shooting, 5 of 10 from the free throw line. Those free throws were big. He's been struggling from the free throw line this year. I don't expect him to make them all, but 5 missed free throws, pretty tough. He had 5 assists on the game, 5 rebounds. If I'm reading this right, or maybe I'm not.
Oh, you're reading TKR or Braden?
No, TKR. 23 points, 9 of 14, 5 of 10 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 3 assists in 29 minutes action. I apologize for that. It's a little kind of small here. And then Daniel Jacobson at 3 points, and Oscar Clough only with 2 points on the game, 1 of 4 shooting. Obviously didn't play very much in the final 15 minutes of the game. So I think that kind of puts kind of like, I think we did a good job of covering the bigs there. I don't know where else you guys want to take this in terms of, you know, we've kind of crossed the hour threshold. We can go as long as you guys want. I don't care. But I was just kind of, we're doing this post-game show a little differently than how we've done here for the majority of the season. So wherever you guys want to take it, dealer's choice.
I just don't think the individual stats matter all that much, other than maybe like Lawyer's 2 of 6 from 3, Braden's 2 of 8 from 3. Like, obviously the 3-point shooting one there, and then the turnovers between Smith and TKR being 7 total. But I thought the team stats were more indicative here, just in terms of like kind of what something Joe said earlier about it, you know, being little things over and over and over again. So it wasn't necessarily huge things from 1 or 2 guys. It was just kind of adding up. And I mean, we can just look down through here. 3-point field goal percentage, relatively similar. Field goal percentage, relatively similar. Free throw percentage, we shoot 53% tonight. A couple of those were front ends and 1-and-1s. Okay. At turnovers, you're not going to jump out too much about that. Still 10. That's still a solid number. But we only out-rebound this small IU team by 5, and we're supposed to be like, for a stretch this season, we were a dominant rebounding team. And we only out-rebound this team by 5 total. Paints in the point is probably the thing that jumps out to me the most. I think we averaged like 32 points in the paint.
He called it paints in the point.
I heard that
too. Points in the paint.
That's going to be Matt Painter's podcast next year.
Yeah.
Paints in the point.
Points in the paint. I think we averaged like 32 a game this year. And we only scored 24 points in the paint. And Joe said it in the preview show, but had I been on the show, I would have said the same thing. Like, this felt like a game where we should have bludgeoned them all night long in the paint. And we only scored 24 points. We only outscored them by 6 in the paint.
And the majority of them came late.
Right. And second chance points, I think we're +1. And we're supposed to be a dominant rebounding team. We're supposed to be a dominant paint team, and we can't. And the last thing I'll say, people have been asking this all year. In the Illinois game, I saw a bunch of fans being like, why was the free throw advantage so wild? And Greg, you asked me about this, and I addressed it then. But like, we don't draw free throws because we're a jump shooting team, and TKR's a floater guy, not attack the rim and go through people. But Indiana fouls the second most of any Big Ten team. And we couldn't get fouls. Like, we couldn't get to, even though we missed when we got there, we couldn't get there at a high amount because like we don't play in a manner that gets us to the foul line. And for so long, people in the country friggin' hated us because no matter if we were hitting shots or not, we could still win games because we would find a way to get there. So like those three stats to me, team stats, just jump out to me in a big way.
Well, I think that's another reason why they need to start feeding the post, as it says right before, right over Joe's shoulder, right? That's another reason.
It says Ed the post right now.
Yeah,
he needs to move his camera just a little bit there. There
Just
we
be
go.
completely off center.
There we go.
Yeah, so I had a joke, but it was inappropriate, so I'll save it for off the air. But anyway, so that's another reason why they need to get it into TKR, right? Is to try to get him to the free throw, because he did, even though he missed 5 free throws, he did make some clutch ones at the end that started to bring them back as well. So I'll commend him for that. But
quick looking. Who has attempted the most free throws on this team this season?
Braden Smith.
Fletcher Lawyer
by 3. 61
That's
free throw
insane.
attempts. Braden Smith second with 58. Clough has 58 as well. TKR 47.
And Braden's lost
49.
people. The Scott, I know it's in the scouting report, so it's no secret the pump, but he ain't getting too many people to bite on it, and that's hurting him because the way he was navigating to the paint, he hasn't gotten it. He's got a few times, but I know he got Illinois a couple times, so I'm not gonna say it's completely disappeared, but it feels like things have gotten bottled up for him a little bit in terms of his slow navigation through the paint, right? And so that's why I liked when they turned it up, whether you want to call it transition, but to me it was less transition and just more moving with more intensity and not getting into your set slower, play harder, as Andy Knapp says in the chat. That's what it came down to me. So I think that's about, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I don't know where else you guys want to take this. A couple more highlighted things I wanted to get through. I know you guys highlighted a couple things. Double D here in the chat says, I'm convinced Painter has never had a team not gel like this, like a senior-led team. It's a tough thing for a coach to figure out when it shouldn't need figured out at this point. And I think every team Painter's had, at least in my 10 years of going through this now with this program, every team has gone through this. So, like, I'm not surprised it's happening. Doesn't take away from how frustrated I am or disappointed that a one seed is pretty much gone. A Big Ten championship is likely gone. I won't give up on the Big Ten championship because it's still possible. Big Ten is a crazy conference, and we know how it can get these last 6 weeks. But I also am not going, even if I say, okay, they're not going to win the Big Ten, they're not going to get a 1 seed, and accept that, I'm not going to give into this idea that they have no chance in March. Let's see how things play out. Because last year we were saying the exact same thing at this time. I literally told the team to walk home from Assembly Hall last year at this time when they played. I was so upset with their effort. And so it is disappointing. It drives me nuts how they let IU, kick their ass here. Like, they had them when we first started doing this coverage 10 years ago. When I first started this channel, they had IU, like, they were dominating IU. I think they won like 10 straight. Like in Mortal Kombat, when they win 10 straight, like the world ends or something. Like the black hole opens and the world ends. That's like that's what they were fighting. That's the plot of the movie. They were dominating IU to the point where the rivalry was toast. You'd go there, their fans were disinterested in it. And then one day it just kind of flipped. and it seems like over the last 5 years or 6 years, it feels like IU takes this rivalry a little more serious than Purdue. And I know that like that's not the X's and O's talk that we're kind of known for here, but that's the thing that irritates me more than anything. They play scared in these games where IU plays it like it's their Super Bowl every year. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired. Purdue needs to get back to, they are the better program than IU. It's not a debate. And IU does this every year. And I tell my IU friends this every year. I told my buddy Gary before the game, IU will play well in this game. There's a good chance they'll win because if IU played Purdue, if IU played every team like they played Purdue, they'd be a good team. But for whatever reason, they put on their best show for Purdue. And I'm tired of having to say that. I want Purdue to start putting on their best when they go into Assembly Hall. They just look so scared every time they walk into that stadium. And I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of it.
I don't got much more to add to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just
no. You're good. I mean, sort of hit back earlier what you were talking about. Like, I will reiterate again. This team last year lost 5 of their last 7 regular season games. They've lost 6 of their last 8 games in total before the tournaments, and they were a bounce away from an Elite 8 game against a Tennessee team that didn't show up against Houston. Now, obviously, you can't. It's not an exact 1-for-1, so it's stretching it a little bit to say they're a bounce away from the Final Four, but like they were. Like
they were.
That's what this team can be, and so it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Like this loss sucks. It just does. For me personally, and obviously fans do be a fan however you want to be a fan, but for me, it's all right. How can this team get back to what they need to be for March? And you have 10 Big Ten games left. You have a handful of very tough games in there. You have plenty of chances to get right. And that's what this season, at the end of the day, that's what this entire season has been about. Yep. And that's not like me trying to downplay this loss or whatever. Like, obviously,
no, because I remember people last year giving you crap when you had this same spiel last year at this time while they were struggling, because you're always going to bring it from a very calm and break it down the way you do. And that's exactly what happened. And people, if I went back and pulled the receipts on people who were like, stop doing this, Joe. Then when the tournament comes around, they did turn it around. So I'm not giving up on March at all, because I've seen this. I've seen this story play out enough times. I just wish they'd skip the part in the middle where they have to do this, but it's just what the Big Ten is,
And I'd like to reiterate too, like this team that has played the last 3 games, like that team cannot go on a deep run, but I still don't think that's who Purdue is. So, yeah, I don't know. You just got to get right. And like I also said, they have 2 games in the next 13 days. Like, I really do think that could help some too. They have 5 days till Maryland, and then they have 6 days off until Oregon at home. So like, there is some time just to. I'm sure they'll have a day or 2 off. I'm sure they'll have some time to get right mentally, and then I'm sure they'll have time for some very tough practices, because you can go a bit harder when you don't have a 2-day turnaround for games. So that's my positive outlook to kind of close out the show, I guess.
And I will be in San Francisco for the Maryland game, and then the Oregon game is, I believe, the next Saturday, and that's
the day before the Super Bowl.
That's a daddy-daughter dance for me and Addison. So you guys are going to be lucky enough to not hear my crying on the next 2 post-game shows.
I would wager that if Purdue would lose either one of those 2 games, Bragg still joins via mobile phone for one of those 2 post-game
I'll
shows.
say this much: if Purdue gets back to what they're doing these next 2 games, I'm going to question if I should be joining these post-game shows, because ever since the Bears season ended, Purdue was 17-1 when the Bears were in the playoffs. They lose, they get knocked out of the playoffs, and now everything in my life has fallen apart.
If we were really clickbaity, then like the title would be like, "Is Caleb Williams the reason why Purdue's losing?" or something like that.
Right.
We would just tie that all together.
Yeah. No, but like
to a couple of more.
To a couple of points, or really just one point. Joe, you said something about be a fan the way you want to be a fan. And I just kind of want to throw out there, because I feel like sometimes people watch the show and they're like, why aren't you guys more mad? Or why aren't you guys more negative or raging and blowing up or da 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 da? And I will just say, like, most of the people who started following me way back when followed me because I started Boiler Diehards. The entire reason I started that site was because I would be a raging fan after losses. That would be like, all right, the entire Facebook world doesn't need to see me rage about these Purdue losses. So I started a separate Purdue Facebook group that then like randomly blew up to have 15, 16,000 fans in it, which is how Kraig found me and how I got invited onto this show later on, where I could put my thoughts onto that space. But once I at least kind of entered the media phase and saw more of the background inner workings, learn more about the game, and not saying this is just understanding the game or anything like that, but just like realize like, okay, like sometimes the matchup just isn't there or this or that. Like, I don't know. I just became much calmer and I guess analytical about the way I look at things that happen and understand sometimes it's just a matter of the other team played better. Tonight's not one of those nights. Like if I was old Kraig, I'd have been keyboard warrior on this show. Like if I never would have happened on this show and it was just Joe and Kraig, I would be on here right now raging away about this loss 100%. So like, again, be a fan the way you want to be a fan. We're going to analyze it in as much of a level-headed manner as we can. I mean, not Kraig, but Joe and I. And Joe's gonna rage, or Greg's gonna rage. But either way, like be a fan the way you want to be a fan, and we're gonna try to cover the game the way we feel we do it best.
Yeah, I mean, once you start learning how the food gets made, it kind of changes how you are a little bit as a fan. So it is what it is, but we'll always be fans first, I think at heart, we're in this industry a certain way, but for me, I personally will always be a fan first and media second. And even with my affiliations to the team, I mean, we're always going to keep it respectful, but we're always going to try to give you as balanced and truthful analysis and authentic takes as we possibly can. That's to me the most important, is authenticity always above all. And I think the three of us try to fulfill that for you as best we can. Lone Hot Pocket says it can't be a coincidence that these things keep happening to Painter coach teams. It just can't.
I remember the other thing I needed to say real quick. So the last starred comment said something about a team, saying something about a team that never felt like a Painter team quite so much, or not list. I don't know what it was.
Right. Double D said, right.
Yeah. He clearly, like, I can always tell when somebody's a little bit younger because, like, but I don't feel like he's that young. But like 2013-14 Purdue, 2014-15 Purdue, like Rafael Davis's freshman and sophomore year, they finished last in the Big Ten, and then the next year go like 16-15 or something. Like, bro, we ain't that. Like, we ain't that. So
well,
just
it's not
like
even
chill,
those teams, because this team was 17-1. They got off to one of their best starts in Big Ten play that they've ever had. So I don't even think those teams are representative. I think the last 10 years, this is par for the course of what these teams have done over the last 10 years. No matter what seniors have been on the team, they just, for whatever reason, they hit a lull, and some of them are shorter than others.
I think, like, also if you follow other teams as closely as you follow Purdue, you'd probably find, like, I would say probably 85% of fan bases probably say the same thing about their team. Like, just kind of flip through some schedules. Michigan State last year, they won the Big Ten by 3 games. They lost 3 of 4 at one point in the beginning of February. Like, these teams, even like the best teams, sometimes just have these stretches. Now you have like some super outliers, like maybe Arizona won't this year or something like that. Or like I'm not saying you bat 100 with every single team having these slumps, but like, I mean, what, 3 years ago, UConn won the national championship and they lost 5 of 6 straight games in the Big East. And like the Big East then was better than what it is right now, but still, like, it's not to say that you can't be upset or can't want more from the team. Like, absolutely. Like, I think that's very fair. But at the same time, like, we can't say that this is specifically a Matt Painter only problem. Is it something that pops up for Purdue? Yeah. And like, is that something to be upset about? For sure. But it's you can flip through a lot of teams and probably find pretty similar instances.
So yeah, tonight I've probably booted more people from the chat than I have in our 5 years of ever doing this, but it was mostly IU fans that wanted to come in and try to ruin what this chat should be for Boilers fans. I don't ever want to keep people from this channel. I mean, we had a lot of Illinois fans complimenting they came in wanting to come aggressive at us, and I took a lot of pride in some of the comments we got about them being pleasantly surprised by the analysis we give. So other teams' fans are welcome, but you're not going to ruin the chat for the people that call this what we do here home, this community here home. So you want to come in and talk ball or have a little fun with us, you want to be incessant, you're going to get booted from the chat. No hard feelings. We still love you. Do your thing. Patel Boiler Up says many things to fix, but if you can fix one thing and only one thing only with this team, what do you fix? You guys go ahead and answer this.
Hold on.
Ooh.
Caveat for this. Is this like given the personnel that we have?
Yes.
I'm going to say a realistic change.
Yes. One thing you can fix on this team. Not bring Glenn Robinson in.
I like. I want to hold on. I want to look at a couple stats really quick before I say this. It honestly might be as simple as just like and I guess it kind of ties in multiple things, but like just being more physical again. Like when we like the first, I don't know, 13 games of the season, it was just like, oh wow, this Purdue team just like attacks the glass. And I understand some of it's against inferior competition, so it helps boost some stuff. But like every game, it was just like, man, Purdue is just like even if they're not like, there were multiple games where we're like, man, TKR had 3 rebounds, but like he attacked. Clough maybe only had 5 rebounds, but he attacked. And like I feel like I haven't had that thought specifically on the glass and really like 2026. Like maybe there's a game I'm missing in there, but it just kind of feels like that felt like it was something that was going to be like a very core identity of this team, and it's kind of slipped away.
Yep. Kraig, what are you fixing? Save us.
Leadership and communication.
Okay.
This team has to communicate better. This team has to be more connected. That shows up on the defensive end. The best players at any level make the rest of the team better around them with their leadership and communication.
Can I ask you what happened, Kraig, to Jakari Harris? All summer I was expecting him to have like a breakout year. You were at more practices than me and Joe, so I'm going to blame you because everybody said that Jakari was going to have a great year.
Whoa. Find me one reference where I said that.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. Maybe I wasn't listening hard enough. Now that the season started.
I like what Jakari's doing and how he's progressing as in the role that he's in. You never heard me mention those words. So don't put them on me.
Yeah.
Jakari Harris, #1 steal percentage in the Big Ten during conference play.
Because that would be my fix is that I don't know how, but let's get Jakari more involved. Because like I don't know, I thought I heard all summer about how he was balling out. I know what he's capable on both ends of the court. When we're talking about giving this team different looks, I don't know how they do it from a rotation standpoint, but let's get him more involved. Like you said, when you're talking about playing more physical, Jakari will play physical, right? Like, let's get physical guys in there. If we're going to switch the lineup up, let's put some guys in there that are going to get physical with the guy across from them.
And I think like today, I think there are going to be games, especially if Lawyer stays in this slump, where like Jakari will close alongside CJ and Braden, especially if this 2-man game becomes even more prevalent between Braden and TKR. But like today, it felt like to me, like Jakari and Meyer, they had their chance to like be the big minutes guy out of that third guard spot. But like both just, and I'm a huge Jakari guy. I always have been, but like both just miss so many defensive rotations. And maybe it's tougher because when you're in that role, you just have a shorter leash. It is what it is. I think there's going to be games where he can. It just felt like just that strat. Like I'll pull up the rotation here, and again, take this with a grain of salt because we know plus minus small sample size doesn't actually mean much, but more of just like in the specific game flow, if we're looking at the second half with 13 to like 10 minutes left, Jakari comes in, Omer comes in, and they're -8 in those like 4 minutes. And I just think like this game was one where they just went away from it. But I think there are going to be games where it's just like, yeah, it makes sense. Like if Braden and TKR are feasting, you don't like Jakari's a good enough shooter. He's 37% during conference play, 33% on the year. Like obviously not knocked down, but good enough to make one where you have enough spacing and then you can get more defenses. I don't know. Would you call Jakari's the second best perimeter defender on this team? I would think, right? It's him or Braden, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I felt like Braden to me is like more off-ball defender, like jumping gaps and whatnot. In terms of on-ball defender perimeter, I think second best for sure.
All right, a few more things. $5 super chat from DT5DT. Appreciate you. Sorry if you had a comment attached to that and couldn't find it. So, but appreciate you sending in $5. SLK Boiler said, "Wait, why are we so worried about the offense? Until tonight, we've been pretty damn good on offense, right? We absolutely have been one of the best offensive teams in the country until tonight." And that's where Joe points out, like the margin of error for the offense. They have to do this every night.
And I would like to add, like, so today was Purdue's third worst offensive performance of the season, like 1.08 points per possession per Ken Pom. The exact numbers get adjusted a little bit just because it's always estimated on possessions as I'm stalling to get the exact stat that I want. So roughly 1.08 points per possession was their third worst offensive performance today. D1 average is like 1.07. So like their third worst offensive performance was average D1. So like it's not like it was bad relative for Purdue standards is more of what it was. Yeah. And you have so much pressure of it to be elites that when it's just fine, then things like this happen.
I am Saluki here in the chat says, "Is this a quad 2 loss?" Kraig?
No, it's quad 1. On the road, you only have to be top 75 in net to be a quad 1. And I think I use like 35 or somewhere in that range. I looked it up a minute ago, but I'm old. I've already forgotten. So
beating Purdue
a quad 1 loss.
Yeah. Still feels bad after they had lost 4 of their last 5.
I want to address that top one that I starred, by the way.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we were going there or not. I clean up says Lawyer is bad. He's had like 2 or 3 good games his whole career.
Yeah, if Lawyer's only had 2 or 3 good games in his career, I've only had 2 or 3 good days in my entire friggin' life. Like, that's ridiculous. I put out a tweet like early on in this season. Somebody was like, Lawyer's only scored a bunch of points against really bad teams or non-Power 5 teams. Almost all of Lawyer's biggest outputs have been against Power 5 teams. All Lawyer's best games have been against elite teams primarily. Arizona for 27 and this team for 25 or 22, whatever. Like, has he had bad nights against good teams?
Normally plays pretty well at Assembly too.
Yeah, he had 20 last year against them.
This is just a ridiculous statement and just needs to not ever be mentioned again.
Well, whoever
I apologize.
No, it's fine. He's been picked on for 4 years by fans of this program.
I just and this is more of my natural state. Like I try to just have balance, and like to me, the balance there would be like, hey, Lawyer's been struggling. Like, does he need to play less minutes? Does like rotations need to change? That to me is a very unbalanced statement of just like, yeah, that's just coming from pure like hate. I assume for or I shouldn't assume that, but like just not liking a player. Obviously he hasn't been great. Like he just hasn't for the last really since the last 5 games or so, something like that. But yeah, to say something like that is insane for a guy who has helped Purdue make a national championship, has started every single game, and has made a whole lot of threes.
Tarek Kamal is waking up in Florence, Italy right now. Doesn't that sound nice? The sun's coming up in Florence, Italy, and he's joining. a Boilers in the Sands post-game show that's an hour and a half in as we're trying to soak up our tears. Sounds lovely, though. Final question for me, and maybe I should save this because we're almost an hour 35 in, but Antoine West, Liam Murphy, Raleigh Burgess, is there any thought of anything over the last month or last couple weeks of, I wish we had one of those guys, or that we used, like they can actually use Murphy. He just sits on the bench. Why did they have Murphy come to Purdue if he's not going to play? Is he like, it does like, is his role like, I don't get that transfer because like they don't use him. I'm not expecting Murphy to save the Boilers, but it's just interesting to me that he is not an option whatsoever for them. And then the other guys, they decided not to play this year. Could we use them? I know I'm asking about 3 guys, but you can start with Murphy.
Murphy to me doesn't fix any issue for Purdue. Like, he came to Purdue knowing he was going to be like the 10th man. And if he was able to figure it out defensively, then like he could find a way to maybe get some spot minutes. But with Benner playing so well, like that was kind of the debate all offseason. It was just like Benner's just better. Like Benner is just better than Murphy. And I'm not trying to like be mean to him, but like even when I broke down the film this offseason, like Murphy was one of the worst defenders on one of the worst defenses in all of college basketball last season. And that was at North Florida. It's just hard to transfer that up. Especially at a spot where they need something, and Benner provides some toughness. Now, we mentioned like the Iowa State game, like that could have been a spot for Murphy where it's just like Purdue was getting great looks and just nobody could hit him, and maybe that could have been a spot for Murphy to come in and just see if he can drill 2 or 3 and see what happens. But I just don't think he really fixes anything. In theory, you would love to have like I think there's potential that like next year Burgess could be something that could have been really important for this year, but you don't really get probably next year Burgess unless you let him redshirt this year. I just think he needed some time. And then West is just a minutes thing, but like,
why did Burgess need
but
time when he played last year? And I thought at times looked decent.
He broke
because
his leg.
I think, yeah. And I think he needed to redshirt last year and they just really didn't have options. Like,
yeah,
I think he's going to be a good player for Purdue. He just felt like somebody that needed time for his body, for the speed of the game for him to kind of catch up to it. Where in an ideal world, he would have redshirted last year too, or instead, honestly. Yeah. But I mean, we remember last year, like First was really the only serviceable big. I mean TKR obviously, but he was obviously more of a 4. And so it just kind of got put in some spots.
And then Antoine West probably not saving this team as a freshman.
No, but I've heard nothing but good things.
So here's where I'm gonna go. Burgess had the same surgery as Jacobson in the offseason, was gonna have to rehabilitate.
I forgot when that was. Yeah,
he was playing before like the season started in practice and everything else, but just where the minutes were gonna be with TK and Clough and Jacobson didn't look like they would necessarily be there a ton. So I think that made 100% perfect sense. I'm not sure Murphy fixes anything defensively, which is the biggest issue. So I understand that. I will just flat out say, from my perspective, I like wish that West wouldn't have redshirted in the end. And I'm not 100% sure where those minutes come from. Like everybody knows I was incredibly high on West all summer, to the point where at one point I said, who knows who the starting 5 is? West might even crack it before it's said and done. Now, I kind of said that, tongue in cheek, but I thought like he brought some things to this team from an athleticism standpoint and a defensive standpoint that nobody else did. And right now, those things look like they could help. Now, he also very well could have never seen the light of day this year. But on, I don't know if you watched the Running Point podcast with Sleepers or whatever, but Waddell asked Braden who he thought might lead the team in scoring next year, and his first answer was Antoine West.
Yeah, I mean, like that's one where we as fans have the benefit of like we don't really have to think about the future because like I kind of said this offseason too. Like I've been high on West, and it's like if you're going for a championship, have every weapon at your disposal.
Tool. Every tool in the toolbox. Yep.
Yeah,
Same thing.
but at the same time, I am not in charge of thinking about Purdue in 3 years, and like, so I don't blame. Like, I'm glad I don't have to make that call because like it would be great to have him, but then if he's awesome as like a junior, or if he stays 4 years and is awesome as a senior, then it's going to be like, man, glad he redshirted. So I don't know. It's one of that one's a really tough one.
All right. Well, that
my only thing with West is I don't think he stays 4 years. I think he goes pro before that. Personally, I think he's going to be that good. But that's just me.
Well, we know you love West, and we know Joe loves Jakari, and I love Jack Benner. And so if
I love West too, by the way.
No, we all just get one. And if the three of us,
hold on.
The person that we love the most, if those three guys work out, then maybe those guys will win. They can still win a national championship this year. We're not giving up.
We have to remember Braden Smith is on this team. Like at some point in a 40-minute sample size with the season on the line, like there's maybe not a single player in the country I'd rather have than Braden Smith.
Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. I'm excited. I'm excited for this team to get out of this rut. I'm excited for you guys to do 1 hour podcasts here coming up on Sunday and for Maryland and Oregon, as this was probably our longest post game of the year. Tammy Wallen finishes things off, says, thanks guys. I'm on Mountain Time and the Boilers in the Stands therapy is hitting great tonight. Well, lucky for Tammy, it's Mountain Time. Unfortunately for Kraig and Joe, it's Eastern Time. And that means it's 1 a.m. for these two fine gentlemen. Coming up on midnight for me. So we appreciate everyone hanging out here. Last couple have been tough, but you guys have all shown up and shown out here in the chat, even fans of the other team. We appreciate everyone's support to the program. So stay tuned for previews here coming up. I'll be out for the next week and a half or so as I'm going out to San Francisco for Super Bowl coverage. But these guys will hold down the fort with previews. Got Maryland, got Oregon next week. Maryland's on Sunday, so just stay tuned for previews, stay tuned for post-game shows, you know the deal, and just stay tuned for all updates. Make sure you follow Boilers in the Stands on Facebook and Instagram. Craig's been pulling out the content on there as well, and subscribe, like, all that stuff. We've gotten through the pleasantries. Joe, Kraig, thank you guys as always. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Keep your head up, ladies and gentlemen, and always Boiler up.